A very warm welcome. You're watching RT International with me, Nikki Aaron. Now, our top story this hour, Donald Trump has completed his European trip, which began at a NATO summit and ended in a historic meeting with Vladimir Putin. Now, the US president is set to meet with Congress members. However, they may not give him the warmest welcome.
My mouth is still agape. I can't believe.
It's thoughtless, it's dangerous, it's weak.
I think it was disgraceful.
Kowtowing to the number one enemy we probably have on the globe, Vladimir Putin.
It's bewildering. It's mind-blowing.
It's inexplicable. Or maybe it's not.
It's a big, hairy, terrible, outstanding question.
Is the possibility that President Putin holds damaging information over President Trump.
Well, Trump defended himself from the attacks in perhaps his favorite way, through Twitter. He stressed that he has great confidence in US intelligence, which has repeatedly stated that Russia meddled in the 2016 election. But Trump added he can't focus on the past, as the two nuclear superpowers must get along. We spoke to former Congressman Ron Paul, who believes that American media are used to portraying Russia as an enemy.
But you also mentioned so far in this program about the American media, and that is a big problem because for some reason they're almost unanimously endorsing the idea that we have to have an enemy. And at this point, especially for the last 20 years, they've been working very hard to make Russia the enemy. And I think this is wrong. And it's not the Democrats alone that do this. It's the Democrats, and along with some disgruntled Republicans who they just don't like Trump. But no, I was very pleased with what went on, and it's a step in the right direction. I think the biggest thing that if it ever had a serious discussion, I guess it would come out on how much we've been involved when we shouldn't be involved, for instance, in Ukraine and how that occurred. But if they don't want to concentrate on those problems and they want to look forward, I think that is great. But I think the next best step ever would be for us to reassess this and say that Trump's going in the right direction and talk them into getting rid of the sanctions on Russia.
Well, let's get the latest from the US now and cross live to our correspondent Samira Khan. Samira, good to see you. How outraged are the US media at the moment? We know yesterday evening, in the aftermath of that meeting, there was a lot of anger. How are things playing out today?
Well, the summit has the entire country up in arms, and that includes the media and U.S. politicians. Now, to give you an idea of what it's like here, I have two newspapers to show you. One, the Washington Times. Trump sides with Putin over intel. Number two, it gets worse. The Daily News. Open treason. Trump backs enemy Putin over U.S. intel. So in this political climate, if you don't support increased escalation between two nuclear superpowers, it's considered treasonous. But going back to the press conference itself, Trump's pragmatism and his constructive attitude was appreciated in Russia, judging by the comments of some Russian statesmen. Now, when Trump was bombarded with questions regarding alleged Russian meddling, Trump chose to focus on building positive relations and building bridges between the two countries. And his slogan for the summit, quote, "I would rather take a political risk in pursuit of peace than to risk peace in pursuit of politics." This was also appreciated in anti-war circles in the U.S. But how did the U.S. media respond? Well, let's take a look.
There's a reason there is a big national freakout happening right now over what the president just did in public.
Vladimir Putin pitched a shutout. Trump got beat up in a locker room.
What worries me about you, Mr. President, is you seem to say only good things about your enemies.
It was shocking. It was appalling.
There was a real sense of defeat.
And deep breath.
You have been watching perhaps one of the most disgraceful performances by an American president.
He showed cowardice on that world stage where the president looked like a weak, dumpy stooge.
We negotiated from a position of weakness yesterday, and Vladimir Putin walked away from Helsinki with a win.
He had a chance to show loyalty to the men and women in uniform, and instead he betrayed them.
It's a disaster.
some U.S. politicians took to social media to denounce the summit entirely, even calling for the U.S. military to act. Representative Steve Cohen said, quote, "Where are our military folks? The commander-in-chief is in the hands of our enemy." But then Cohen backtracked on his words, saying that he didn't call for a coup. So after all this, we're left with one question. Why is Washington, D.C. so hostile to peace between the U.S. and Russia? So we'll just have to find out how Congress reacts after this.
Indeed we will. That's RT's Samira Khan. Thank you for that update. Well, meanwhile, Vladimir Putin took part in a heated interview with the American channel Fox News, in which he was pressed on key issues relating to Russia.
Firstly, Russia as a state has never meddled in the internal affairs of the US and in particular has never meddled in its elections. Secondly, wait, let me answer. Have some patience. You really think that it was possible to meddle in the US elections from the territory of Russia and to influence the choice of millions of Americans? It's ridiculous.
I'm not asking whether they influenced, I'm asking whether they tried.
I will answer now. The hackers about whom everyone was talking about, I will return to it, do not worry. They opened the emails, as they told us, and there was information that inside the Democratic Party there were manipulations in favor of one of the candidates, and that is all. And that the leadership of the executive body of the party resigned, so they admitted this fact. And that was the most important thing in all of it. That the manipulations of the US public opinion must be stopped, and they had to apologize to the voters. Now, Mr. Miller.
But, Mr. President,
let me answer.
May I just say, you're indicating...
If you don't like my answer, tell me then, and I will stay silent. But if you want Americans to hear my opinion, then have more patience. Mr. Miller and his colleagues. Why, Mr. Miller and his colleagues? Let me finish speaking.
Disrespectful.
This time you won't stop me. Don't make the relations between the US and Russia the hostages of your internal political struggles. We want to be given some documents on this issue, at least some material. As you see, no one is saying anything specific. It's like in the case of the accusations against us over the meddling in the US political process. We had not been given any documents. And now we see that 2 more people became the victims of this so-called Novichok. But I had not even heard the names of these people before. Who are these people? And from what did they suffer and why?
Supposedly they picked up the bottle that was used to attack Skripal. May I ask you one last question, sir?
Let us handle this issue first. What bottle? Who picked it up? And from where? And what is its chemical formula? And whether there are different reasons for which these people have suffered. And maybe these reasons are inside the UK. But no one wants to investigate this properly. They just throw empty accusations, and for what sake? Why worsen the relations between our countries when Russia wants to build them with the UK properly?
Do you see the summit as a turning point, an end of the effort by the West in recent years to isolate Russia?
You see that these efforts did not see any success, and they could never have seen it, given the size and the value of Russia on the scale of global security and in economics. And I mean the energy cost part of the world's economics. The understanding of what is uniting us and on what we have to work together is leading us to the idea that it is necessary to stop the attempts to fight each other and, on the contrary, to unite our efforts for overcoming common difficulties and problems. I think it is a good start.
Behind the US media speculation of whether Donald Trump is in fact a Russian agent or not, Saturday's summit in Helsinki did in fact see some impressive diplomacy. One of the issues where the leaders seemed to have common ground was Syria, and Russia's defense ministry says it is ready to implement any deals agreed. Well, RT's Maria Finoshna joins me now in the studio to discuss the details. Maria, how much do we know at this point?
I'm afraid there is not too much to discuss because there are no details on exactly what has been agreed in Helsinki. And from what we hear from Russia's defense ministry right now, it's also not clear what steps we may expect from both sides in Syria. But what is clear is that both Russia and US are not interested in making this strategic information public. But what is clear that that the dialogue that Mr. Trump and Mr. Putin had on Monday in Helsinki and these claims by Russia's military is definitely a positive sign for Syria. Both sides also stress that they are interested in ending the humanitarian crisis in Syria, and they said that they are going to focus their efforts on helping people in Syria. Let's have to say what Mr. Putin and Mr. Trump said.
I think there is plenty to work on. A crucial thing is there are many refugees in states bordering Syria, in Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan. If we help people move back to their homes, this will ease the migration pressure on European countries. I think that is extremely important.
If we can do something to help the people of Syria get back into some form of shelter and on a humanitarian basis, and that's what the word was, really, a humanitarian basis. I think that both of us would be very interested in doing that, and we will do that.
So as for the military situation, the main focus right now in Syria is on the region bordering Israel, and the confrontation between Syria and Israel has been very severe recently and has actually been quite always between the two countries. But it's interesting that both Putin and Trump mentioned the security and of Israel and the relations between Israel and Syria in that speeches following the long meeting behind closed doors in Helsinki. So we may expect some, easing of that situation in Syria maybe. But again, it's hard to say exactly what to expect. And as Mr. Trump said, the representatives of the two countries' national securities are going to meet soon to follow up the issues that the two presidents discussed. So we have to wait and see.
Right. And what is the current situation in Syria right now?
Yeah, it is a catastrophe. The war has been raging there for 7 years. It is a humanitarian crisis, as agreed by both Russia and US and the international community, in fact. But as I said, the focus is on that region bordering Israel. And just shortly after the meeting ended in Helsinki between Putin and Trump, we heard reports that the Syrian government managed to regain control of a strategic point in that region. So it's not a secret that the US has some influence on Israel. So we may say that that could be a reaction to or what the two presidents have agreed. But again, it's really hard to speculate right now. But it is a positive sign for Syria, I think.
Okay, that's RT's Maria Finoshina. Thank you for bringing us up to date on that.
It should. What we understand from the atmosphere, yes, we don't know the details, but at least what we understand is that there will be some augmentation of the cooperation between the two militaries, the Russian and the American militaries. So we're not only speaking about agreed points in policy or agreed steps, but also concrete steps, because these are the people on the ground, and they have been described throughout the or within the conference yesterday, news conference yesterday, that they actually talk to each other much better and much more than the politicians and the two superpowers do. So there is some positive take on that. Now it seems that we're heading towards recognizing sort of spheres of influence. We understand that probably President Donald Trump would want to implement his decision taken about 10 weeks ago that the United States is going to withdraw its troops from Syria and, quote unquote, let others deal with it. So if that happens, we're talking now perhaps about an exit strategy. And if both superpowers recognize this sort of sphere of influence within the Middle East, it would definitely bring less conflict, because, things won't be attested anymore.
And of course, you know, if the situation in Syria does improve, would it have a knock-on effect and ease the EU migrant crisis?
It would. Well, first of all, we need to understand that there are parties that are still interested in spreading fear amongst Syrian immigrants and refugees outside Syria. Let me give you a small